Hi students, welcome to my YouTube channel, and today the topic which we are going to start with it is the aeolian processes and associated landforms. So here the aeolian process refers to the work of wind, because wind is also an agent of gradation like the other agents, river, glacier, underground water, sea waves, etc. Particularly, work of wind is much active in the arid and semi-arid regions. Again, a very simple term if we say deserts, because deserts, if you see, obstructions are very less for the wind, because in desert, due to the harsh kind of climatic conditions, scant vegetation is present, okay, and compromising of dry grasses and few bushes, which is incapable of protecting the land surface from the force of winds. Okay, so before we move on to the different processes of the wind or the action of wind, we need to understand the distribution of hot deserts too. If we see, most of the deserts in the world are found on the west margin of the continents. If you see the figure here, between 20 to 30 degree north and south latitude, and lying towards the west of the continents. Okay, but however, there are like some other deserts also which do exist beyond this limiter. So here a few of the deserts like Arizona, Atacama, Sahara, Kalahari, Thar, Western Great Australian Desert. Okay, now the effect of the wind, erosion, transportation, and deposition produces three distinct type of deserts. Sandy desert. In the sandy desert, the landscape is dominated by the sand. Next we have is the stony desert. Stony desert is the landscape is dominated by the gravel, rubble, pebble, etc. Rocky desert. Okay, now the landscape here is dominated by the rocky surface, which has been completely eroded away, and it is marked by the formation of depletions, or the blowouts, and mounds are only left over. Okay, the sand and all has been eroded away by the wind. So these are the three different types of deserts, which is found all over the world. Next we have is the work of wind in the desert area, the erosional work of wind, as well as the transportation and depositional work is also done by the wind. So first we are going to discuss about the erosional work of the wind. So the erosion in the desert areas occur mainly in three different ways: deflation, abrasion, and attrition. Okay, now deflation means the particles, the loosened particles, which the broken disintegrated particles by the weathering, are blown away by the wind. That is called deflation. Now abrasion is a process like the dust and the sand particles, okay, which present in the air, okay, floating in the atmosphere or in the air, and when the wind blows faster, this particles act like a sandpaper on the rocks. Okay, now these tools of the wind will wear down the rocks by scraping, rubbing, undercutting, and this action is known as abrasion. Next is the attrition process. So in this process, what happens, students, is the sand particles which are present in the air, which remain suspended in the air, it will also strike with each other. Okay, as a result, due to the friction, it will be reduced or disintegrated or gets rounded in shape. This process is called attrition. Okay, students, now let us discuss the landforms made by the wind erosion. The first one is deflation hollows. Now, due to the deflation action of the wind, many small depressions are formed on the desert, which are called deflation hollows. Now, if the same depressions due to the deflection action, continuous deflection action of the wind, okay, a saucer shaped depression is found, means the deflation hollows will grow bigger in size and took a shape of a saucer shaped depression, that is known as blowout. Next we have is the oasis. Now due to the continuous deflation process, okay, the land surface will be lowered down to such an extent where the groundwater may come to the surface, so that leads to the form of a small lake or pond in the middle of the desert. Now this is called oasis. Okay, so it is also formed due to the continuous deflation process only. And yes, underground water is also present in the desert areas. So sufficient water if available in an oasis leads to the permanent plant growth as well as the human settlement also. Next we have is the mushroom rocks. Now the maximum erosion in an upstanding mass of the rock occurs at the lower level, okay, and where the friction is very close to the ground. As a result, the abrasion process is more, the undercutting of the rocks is more, and it's led to the formation of a shape like the mushroom. So that's why we call it as mushroom rocks. Now, students, when the hard rocks and softer rocks are arranged in horizontal layers parallel to each other, the softer rocks will be eroded faster, but the upper hard rocks will look like a tables on the softer rocks. This feature is known as geogen. Next is the Yardang. The formation of Yardang is also very similar to the geogen, but the only difference is the crest, the rock crest or the top of the rocks will be very irregular, and series of sharp irregular rock crest will be present. So this kind of feature is called Yardang. So it forms when the wind blows slightly tilted, okay, or in the alteration of harder rocks and softer rocks. Now next is the stone lattice. So the term meaning of the term lattice is the when the the structures of metal and the wood are crossed each other and the square or diamond shapes are left in between. This is called lattice. Okay, so if those kinds of features are seen in the rocks, we call it as stone lattice. It is formed when the parallel series and hard rocks and softer rocks stratas are arranged in horizontal as well as in a vertical manner, and due to the abrasion process those kinds of features are formed, which is called stone lattice. Okay. Now students, due to the erosive action of the wind, most of the sand and dust is eroded away, but some rock masses will stand out there, okay, and standing from the surface of the desert. Such kind of feature is known as insel bulge. Sometimes due to the abrasion process, sharp edges are formed over the rock surface, okay, and when the stones roll away from their positions, several sharp edges are formed over the rocks. So such kinds of rocks are known as ventifacts or beveled stones. Now students, sometimes the harder rocks which is present over the softer rocks or on the top of the softer rocks will protect the softer rocks from the erosive action of the winds, and it will resemble the shape of a pillar, which is also called demossili or earth pillars. Now next is your mesas and butties. So when the harder rocks are cut in such a way that the it caps, okay, its slopes will dip down in all the direction and forms a flat top tabular hill of resistance rock. This is called mesa, and when the top of the mesa is very narrow, it is called butty. So students, when there is drop in the velocity of the wind, then it will lead to the depositional work. Two important depositional work of the winds are sand dunes and Leucis deposits. Sand dunes refer to the mound or a hill or ridge of sand with a crest on a definite summit. Okay, so how it is formed? It is formed when the carrying capacity of the the sand laden wind is reduced, and a small obstacle, whether it is a bush or a rise in a ground or a boulder or even the skeleton of the dead animals, then the sand deposition will start taking place over that obstacle. So within much time it will also lead to the rise in the deposition. So a dune has a long and a gentle windward slope but much steeper on the leeward slope. Sometimes it has been noticed that the sand dunes have a tendency to shift their position, and they shift or migrate in the direction of the wind. Now this kind of phenomena is known as shifting of sand dunes. Now generally students, two different types of sand dunes has been observed: Barkhan and longitudinal or safe sand dunes. So Barkhan is a typical sand dunes with a crescent shaped front and having two horns towards the leeward slope, and it has a very gentle or a convex windward side. Next is the longitudinal sand dunes. Now these sand dunes are long narrow ridges of sand and which lies parallel to the direction of the winds, and it often drawn to a longer distances, so that's why it is called longitudinal dunes. And it is also referred as the safe dunes because in an Arabic word the meaning of this term is shroud, which is ascribed to the sharp and narrow nature of this sand ridge. So losses is actually the accumulation of the sand particles. Now when the velocity of the wind will drop, okay, and the sand particles will start accumulating or depositing in that place, leading to the formation of losses deposits.